of lockdowns during COVID period, all of us have experienced disruption, and most of the people have done well where they had a good digital transformation within the companies, and most of them are large enterprises. We never had any problems during COVID time because all of us were equipped with digital requirement for probably a decade or so. But it is all few, especially the large industries. The companies which have suffered during the COVID because of the lockdowns are mainly small and medium enterprises. And it was too late for them to getting into digital work quickly, and it was in a lockdown situation, and which we experienced for our vendors, like in Jyoti Labs. Our vendors had little problems. We never had. And most of them had to work really hard. And the outcome of the COVID and the lockdown, series of lockdowns, was that it's a high time for us to get into digital transformation for every company, whether it is small, medium, or large, and in every department. Because once you are doing digital, including us, we did have that confusion that what is the digital? I mean, we hear about it, we talk about it, and we give lectures also on digital transformation. But frankly, nobody knows exactly what is the digital transformation is all about. So we felt, and definitely it is an initiative, a noble initiative of PWC. And when Chetan discussed with us saying that is that when what we can do, I said we should do it for small and medium enterprises. They are the future of the country, and they create the jobs. And any disruption in small and medium enterprises will always affect the large enterprises, because somewhere they are the vendors, somewhere they are the forward traders. So to that extent, we felt that we should have a digital transformation series of classes wherein we can discuss and we can explain to them what is it called for to go for complete digital transformation. And we are in the third class now. The first class was on the supply chain, and it was received very well. And experts from PwC had come and discussed about it. And the second one was on the front line automation and transformation in entirety to the outside world. That was received absolutely fantastic. And the most sought after series is today, the class. It is on finance. And finance is a nerve center so for everyone. And my core competence was in finance in the past, so I understand that how important the finance is in any small and medium enterprises. And today we are discussing on transformation in finance. And for that, we have now a wonderful panel. And this is the structure in which PwC intend doing is that have the panelists discuss with them, because nobody is perfect in this. It's better that we discuss among ourselves and take a view wherein the others can learn, and also we can help others to get into the transformation. So we have Anish Goenka. He's the EVP and CFO of Jubilant Foodworks. And all of us eat Domino's every day, and especially during COVID time. Every house has got Domino's pizzas. And we have Devendra Gupta, CFO, Panacea Biotech, Praveen Singh Thakur, Director IT at Schneider Electric. We have K. Venkatramanan, ED Finance and CFO, Tata Coffee Limited. We have Shankar Narayan, Group CFO, Strum Shoelace, Somapan Springs. Swayam Saurabh, CFO, Arvind Limited. And we have Atul Pratap, CFO, Solutions and Digital Transformation at Genpact. And if you can see the kind of people who have in the panel, absolutely the best in the industry. And we are very, very proud that we are able to get that kind of panelists for today's discussion. And we have more than 200 people participating in this in today's program. And we have people from NSC, Toyota, Union Bank of India, Deutsche Bank, SBI Funds, Credit Suisse, and SBI Life Insurance, Indian Bank, Buruka Park, plenty of participants, and we also would like to have their views also. So I welcome each one of you for this class, and I request Ritu Rekha, the partner at PwC, to do the deliberation. Thank you for everybody's time, and let's make use of next 1.5 hours to understand more about transformation in finance. Over to you, Ritureka Madam.
Thank you, Ulas. Thank you very much for your opening comments. I can only echo what you said, that I think the pandemic is an opportunity. It was, of course, a human tragedy at a scale that was unimaginable, but I think at the other side of that was an opportunity for the business to scale up digital transformation like never before. Before I get into, a point of view and a presentation on future of finance, and I'm very, very aware of what you said, Ulas, that we're all learners, we're all experiencing it, we're also playing with it, we are helping each other. So I will present the future of finance with the greatest of humility. But before that, I'm going to invite my colleague Vishal Nanavati, who has seen digital transformation in its widest sense, finance, but well beyond finance, to say a few things. And then I'll go forward with that presentation. Vishal.
Thanks, Ritu. Good afternoon to all of you. Mr. Kamath, well said. Again, it's a privilege to be partnering with FICCI on this initiative of running series of interesting topics around transformation. To me, in my experience, transformation has never been a single corporate event, right? It's always a series of strategic projects. It touches the customer centricity. We did the discussion around front office transformation in the previous session, which achieves the growth and enhances the brand value. It requires timely focus on workforce reskilling and upskilling. There could be large-scale ERP implementation projects, for accurate data capture. There could be supply chain efficiencies. We've done the first session on that as well. And then maybe the first step in the world of finance transformation around cost optimization, for improving process efficiencies through automation. Finance transformation should not be viewed as a process or a function transformation. That's a common error that I always see when I interact with my set of clients. It has the capability of partnering with business. It can be a real game changer when it comes to supporting organization on its growth journey. Now, the fundamental model of value creation, what we've been experiencing today, that's pretty much changing. Organizations are becoming outcome oriented in their approach towards transformation. The bottom line is investment in capabilities, right? The differentiating capabilities. Now, for example, as CFOs, one would want to improve performance management for sure. We've seen organizations, they go ahead, they upgrade the ERP and try to, tick the box on performance management improvement metric. But even after that, in many cases, the real value has never been extracted. It's never been derived. Maybe the answer lies in how to invest in right capabilities. So rather than being reactive, let's say to give reports and partner with business leaders, why cannot one look at being proactive? Still give the reports, but be catalyst to growth. In today's times, I would just, kind of sum it up. We've got a very strong panel discussions coming. I don't want to eat away the time on that. But I see that organizations, the challenges that, the companies are facing are unique, and at the same time, they are equally complex, right? There seems to be no perfect answer to resolve through these challenges. But as leaders, when one's faced through the leadership paradoxes, if I may use this term, what is important for our stakeholders is to see as leaders how we help drive the business outcomes, right? As I said, the experience panel today with senior folks who are going to share their own experiences in terms of the challenges that their businesses are facing and how as true leaders, they're helping their own organizations achieve the business outcomes. With that, I'll pass it on back to Ritu. Ritu, I would request you, and if you can present brief snippets around the future of finance and what solutions have been implemented, what are possible to be implemented, and how can finance really partner with business, keeping digital at the core. I think so that's how we should probably get started from here. Over to you, Ritu.
Excellent. Thank you, Vishal. I'm going to request Madhu to bring up a presentation. So to the audience and the esteemed panel, we prepared a few pages to present our point of view. We come from a vantage point of having seen, a variety of businesses of different sizes and scale within India, and obviously being a part of the global network outside. So really, it's a culmination, a distillation of our combined wisdom as of today. I would caution that I think this is an area that is transforming so rapidly, both in terms of technology and the applications of technology and the kind of outcomes that are becoming possible that we couldn't have dreamed of a few years ago. So I'm pretty sure if we were to come back for a masterclass in another year's time, you would only see an evolution of this thought process, that we're about to present today. But with that, let's get started to frame this discussion a little bit. So let's move to the first slide. Thank you. So look, we've stuck our neck out and talked about the next decade of finance. So we've said that let's not talk in terms of 1 or 2 years. Let's think about the 5 mega trends in finance that we're seeing already. And later in the panel discussion, we'll explore a few aspects of this. So first is the drive to zero. There are different languages used for it. People call it touchless. People call it, towards zero, and so on and so forth. I think the idea is that finance, we're predicting, will industrialize the adoption of technology, and the key word being industrialize. I think everyone has experimented. I think everyone has experienced it, touched and felt it by now. But we are saying that, look, finance will be at the forefront of industrializing the digital technologies in the next decade. I think the second one is an emerging theme, which is, all of us are familiar with the meta finance and the metaverse concept. If you really think about it, as our consumers and as our vendors and as our business models shift to the metaverse, and which is the big prediction in the coming 10 years, and all of us who've got teenagers at home and children, this is not a very, sci-fi concept. I think people are dealing with avatars even today. If you look at the way your kids are gaming, if you look at the way people are learning nowadays through virtual reality and so on, this is not so far. So we are saying that this will penetrate into finance, and some of the way in which digital twin supply management will happen, the way workforce planning will happen, etc. It will become a simulation, will go well beyond what we are seeing today. It will enter into the areas of meta finance and beyond. The third one, I think, we're all experiencing even today. I mean, if you look at, I was reading the IMF report, right? Connected finance. So purchasing power parity, India is already the third largest economy. If you look at market exchange rate, we're the sixth largest economy. What that is doing is we are digitizing at a pace that never before as a country, right? Our consumers, our citizens, our government, our regulation environment, our suppliers, and so on and so forth. So this is not just a company which is operating, within the boundaries and using digital. We are working in an ecosystem that needs to be connected into. The faster that we connect and the more seamlessly we connect into that ecosystem, the better finance becomes. So I think the third big theme for us is connected finance. How do you dip into that ecosystem, and how do you become a receiver and a giver of information to that? The fourth one is finance goes micro. We are saying we all know macro trends. We've all, as finance, as CFOs, said that, look, for example, if a war happens and commodity prices go up, of course, it impacts the cost of raw material, and of course, it impacts EBITDA and cash flow and so on. But on the other side, there's also your consumers, your dealers, your distributors, your entire way of going to the market that very, very localized, that is very, hyper localized in terms of the way and the infrastructure that they're operating in. So really, how do you marry the macro and the micro is extremely important for the company's competitiveness, and therefore for finance to say, not only will I manage my supply chain and my cost, but I also have to be extremely agile of connecting into this micro ecosystem and saying that, look, here is the campaigns I need to do, here is the way I need to reach out, here is the way in which my cash should flow into the areas that matter in my marketing and consumers. So it's a coming together of macro and micro both. And lastly, I think all of us are familiar with a concept that has come really into currency now, which is cost variability. So not just about cost reduction, but cost variability. As we are inevitably in a cyclical mode where the economy will go up and down. Volatility is here to stay. We all know that. How do you make your costs variable? How do you quickly invest or get out, as the case may be, depending on what the circumstances demand? So these are the 5 big trends, of the next decade of finance. And maybe, while we have a few more pages, I'll touch upon 3 or 4 pages. I'm conscious that I also want to keep enough time for the panel. So if you move forward, Madhu. Okay, so our framework of the way we think about what is the CFO's role? I think all of us well know that the CFO has gone well beyond controllership and accounting, and that was some time ago. And we all know that this is about enabling the enterprise strategy and business partnering and really unlocking business value. Just for us all to help think about what is this role of the CFO, we've developed this framework. Right on top is digitizing the core. I think that continues to be relevant today. I think we can talk about, in the previous page, I talked about the next decade of finance. The reality is that a lot of enterprises today are digitizing the core, which is finance and around finance. So we continue to implement, let's say, cloud solutions for our clients. We continue to implement digitization and automation technologies for making finance more and more zero touch. There is a big move towards the cloud. and not just use of technologies, but helping finance workforce, skill themselves to use these technologies. That is really digitizing the core. So that is right on top. The second one, and I think one of the panelists, made this comment to me as we were prepping for this session, saying that, the outcomes that the finance drives cannot just be internal, right? And the outcomes that the finance drives has to be very much market facing around catalyzing the whole enterprise growth, which can take various forms of business partnering or even tax planning for the future or value-led finance, as we call it, and so on. So digitizing the core and then external facing outcomes and catalyzing growth. The third one is steer to sustainability. We're all a part of the responsible business as part of responsible citizens. And really in the CFO bucket in the last 12 to 18 months, ESG strategy and reporting and really supporting the ESG strategy for the enterprise as a whole is very much a part of the CFO agenda. And along with that, integrated reporting. And lastly, risks is always going to be there, but well beyond the traditional form of controls and assurance and so on. This is more about creating a whole digital trust, which is the data flow, the information flow, the systems that we use, what we report and what we use inside, really transparency and data lineage that drives that trust and transparency. And of course, the custodian of controls. So I think this is an important frame as we go forward with this discussion and think about finance of the future and what this means. And the last point I'll make on this slide is this is regardless of scale. This is not about saying this is only applicable to large enterprises and not applicable to small and medium. If you really think about it, whoever is trying to compete and win market share today, in our country, this is a framework to think about the 4 dimensions of a CFO role today. If you go forward. Okay, so how do we think about digital? So coming to the topic for today, and we talked about the mega trends, we talked about the CFO role, and how do you think about digital really? Is digital only about process automation? And I think Vishal in his opening comments made it amply clear that it's not. So what is those 3-4 levels of digital? And again, this is our point of view. On the left side is the digital core, which is really your investments in your digital capabilities of process, people, and technology put together. And that is the core that is powering your enterprise even today. And then when you think about digital transformation, it is important to think about transformation in all the 4 dimensions that you see here. One is the process and the related architecture there, saying, can you enable an intelligent finance process powered by technologies? But there's always, to us, outcomes first. The second one is the ecosystem. This has to be connected. This is no longer automation within the boundaries of finance, but this is the ecosystem in which your business operates. Can you connect to your consumers, regulators, bankers, suppliers, and your alliance partners and so on in a very digital way? Because otherwise, it will never be efficient to just do it internally. Data and insights, I like using that quote that I heard long back from my digital officer, which is the ultimate goal of digital and automation is analytics. Therefore, how fast can you arrive at that insights and decisions that you need is the trust that you have in the data and the speed at which you can massage it and really get insights from it. And lastly, the workforce, which is that are our people within the finance function, and many of you in the audience who aspirations to make big finance careers, do we have digital quotient to use that data and to use that technology the way it is meant to be used? So we can never ever ignore our workforce capabilities, as we are going inside there. If you move forward. Okay, so just to double click on a couple of different things, just so that I'll leave you with, the big frame picture and also a few specifics. So look, when you think about 3 aspects, and I'll touch upon process first, and we'll touch about technology and about people. This one is around process. Digital is taking various forms. The digital technologies are taking various forms, and right from RPA, which is already called traditional automation today. I mean, 4 or 5 years ago, RPA was the next big thing. I think today it's part of our, fabric of the way we work. Augmented intelligence, I think many of you are already, whoever has moved out from paper is already, I would argue, using augmented intelligence in some form or the other. Increasingly conversational intelligence, which is the way you're interacting with your systems, and at the interface, there is conversational intelligence. And process insights, which is not just transactional analytics, but I would also use a whole set of emerging technologies on insights. The artificial intelligence and machine learning, they're all working really, really hard to make transactional analytics come alive, for the business. Now, rather than talk about, give you a whole list of technologies, which no doubt, you have access to, I think the whole purpose of technologies is really what's down there at the bottom, which is to connect with your ecosystem, both within and outside, and therefore to lead to scalability, operational efficiency, controls, experience, and employee capacity. So I think when the takeaway from this slide really is that whichever way we deploy technology, it has to do two things. It has to solve for a business challenge, current or the future, as the case may be. And the second is that it has to lead to an outcome, for your business and for your function. So really, those are the two boundaries. We should, in my opinion, never use a technology because, it is there or because it is cool. And I don't think that is the way to deploy technology in a very intelligent way either. As we get into the panel discussion, I'm sure we will hear some perspectives of that. If we move forward in this presentation. Yeah, thank you. I think, so look, I think a couple of messages on this is, what you see on this page is the idea of business partnering and insights. If you do the previous part well, which is automation, and we begin to have trusted data, efficient data, and analysis that is coming out of that data that is actionable, then really what you're really laying the foundation for is changing the way business runs. And for today's CFO, I can tell you that some of the words on the right, which is single source of truth, or integrated driver-based planning or data democratization, it's very, very real. What that really means is that before we can deploy all the analytics and all the digital, we have to make sure that different sources of data inside the enterprise, which by the way are with your customers, sales force, suppliers, finance team, procurement team, marketing, and so on, it has to come together and form a data trail that you can depend on. Then the second thing is, once you do that, then you can begin to use it for very different things. One example that I would like to leave you with is that as finance professionals, you know that if, let's say, return on capital employed, revenue, cash flow, EBITDA are the basics of running business. What you really want to do is, as a CFO, to get to the operational drivers that impact those finance numbers. What you don't want to do is to explain finance numbers by more finance numbers, but not have the ability to really influence or challenge or constructively challenge the operations that are happening out there, right? So I think the digital data and insights, our point of view is that the more tightly you link up financial numbers with operational drivers, the faster and better it is for finance, to become a true business partner. Let's go forward. And I'll just have 2 slides more, and then, I will wrap it up. So look, I think digital workforce, we are in an economy today where predictions are that our workforce itself will begin to consist of, and it already consists of, our full-time workers, our gig workers, our digital workforce, and so on. So that's really, one of the recent clients that we helped transform. Their org chart literally has, some of the robots and people and gig workers, together, and that's really, becoming more and more the norm. I think the question really is that as we think about our finance workforce, what are the personas and what are the skills and capabilities, we are helping them develop? And I think on this page, what we are saying is that, look, over the next 5 years, as finance professionals begin to think about what capabilities should they develop, it's very important that we incorporate the problem-solving mindset. We become technocrats, not just finance professionals, but really techno-functional skills, where we are as comfortable with using digital as we are thinking finance. We are able to mine the data to get the analytics to the table. Of course, we can think big, as a dreamer, and finally the controller. So while this sounds like 5 different dimensions of a super finance professional, we do think that this is the direction in which we should be growing if we want to be future CFOs of enterprises of tomorrow. I will wrap it up by a last slide. Madhu, if you can go to the last slide, please, just to, yeah, you can move forward with this. Just in the interest of time, please go to 9. Yeah, thank you. So look, what I will leave you with is that every time we're talking about future of finance, or we're talking about various things that we can do and how to do it and so on, what are we ultimately trying to do? Sorry, somebody wants to go on mute. Thank you. All right, thanks. The kind of outcomes that we're talking about on various parameters here is, one is obviously, as finance, we want to leap to the top quartile, right? I think whichever way we define it, and I think all of us have got different definitions, but you want to, leap to that. You certainly want to optimize the cost of finance, because really, as a CFO, you cannot tell the enterprise to be lean and efficient unless we are ourselves lean and efficient. But very quickly, I think the second lot here, insights and value-led finance, I think that is, to me, the fulcrum of transformation today now. As people move from the first one, which is the digital connected finance, I think the ask of the CEOs from CFOs is very much, can you do better value capture, faster value capture? Can you elevate the insights into something that I can use? And lastly, of course, that can only be done if you attract the best of breed talent. So really, how do we rebrand ourselves as the choice for the younger generation who want to create finance careers and who want to become CFOs of tomorrow? So I think outcomes unlocked from next gen finance is what we have here. Obviously, this gets very, very tailored to the kind of businesses, the kind of sectors, the kind of problems that we're solving for. But hopefully, I think that's really the end of the presentation, and hopefully it would have given an idea of how to frame the future of finance from both the next decade of finance and also a slightly more short-term view. So thank you for listening. I think we are on time, just a couple of minutes away from the panel discussion. And I think Vishal or Ulas, if you'd like to make any comments, and then I can start the panel discussion.
Nothing from my side, honestly, Ritu. I think so we can get started with panel. You very well captured the future of finance.
Absolutely, Ritu. I think amazing presentation. Your 9 slides have given us the complete, the new dimension of finance. I think personally, I was absolutely, it's a great learning for me. And now, please go ahead with your panel discussion, and we would like to hear from the experts on the panel. Fantastic presentation. Awesome.
Thank you, Ulas, and thank you, Vishal. So look, I now come to the part which is my favorite part, which is really interacting from the CFOs and very, very aspirational companies and very aspirational roles, all of you. So I will just dive right into it and start with Devendra. Predictions for finance. So never easy, but as you look forward, what are the top 3 things, Devendra, that you see for finance? Do we have Devendra on the call?
Yeah, hi Ritu. Thanks for the wonderful presentation. So in my view, finance is already undergoing a transformation digitally as well as otherwise also. The role of finance has been changing, evolving, and in the next 3 years from now, or maybe 5 years from now, I am a firm believer finance will be more like a front-end department rather than a back-end department, as is being perceived today. So from a custodian of the accounting data or the funds providing MIS to becoming a part of the decision-making process, leading the entire decision-making process from the front. So that's where I believe is the first role finance is going to play over the next 3 to 5 years. And the overall functioning of the finance is also going to be very, very different from what we have seen in the past. We have already seen how finance has managed during the COVID lockdown period. always running and working in papers to running from remote locations, managing the entire functions. In the future, finance is going to be more proactive through the systems like AI or RPA or blockchains, which are going to further help finance improve the performance. Third thing where I see finance is going to be transformed is on the reporting front. As is being seen today, it's more periodical reporting like monthly or maybe in case of listed entities, quarterly reporting to real-time reporting. So in near future, I believe finance has to ensure a system in place. You can get real-time reporting on a daily basis or maybe on an hourly basis, how the overall performance of the organization is going to. So in my view, the role of finance is definitely going to change significantly next 3 to 5 years. And one more point is the skill set of the finance function is also expected to undergo a very dramatic change. In the sense today, when we speak of finance, this is more typical perception of finance person like a chartered accountant or an MBA. But in future, a finance person has to be more tech savvy, as you have also mentioned in your presentation. We need to be technocrat, problem solvers. So from a more traditional to modern, lot of changes are going to happen. And that's where finance can really play an important role in the overall transformation of not just the finance function, but in the of the organization as well.
Excellent, Devinder. Thank you. And I think very comprehensive look at all the aspects. So Ashish, very exciting industry, and I think Ulas referred to that, as you came on, and full of dynamism and active changes. What are you seeing? What will finance look like in 2025?
So thanks, Ritu, and I think first of all, a very good afternoon to all the participants and the fellow panelists, and amazing presentation, Ritu. I think future is what we create, and I believe that collectively, all of us are moving in a direction. We're creating a future where I think first of all, finance will become real time. Finance, look, if you see traditionally, always had the opportunity to be a great business partner, but we have mostly been post facto, commentators. I jokingly say to my teams as well that we are often looked at, that proverbial police in Bollywood movies, which comes in where after the stories have played out and now all the damage is done. Yeah. So that I think will have to change. We will have to leverage the power of data and analytics to support and guide the business, as Devendra also alluded to, in time and sometimes even well ahead of time. So how do we start building predictive analytics? The second change that I foresee is, what I call is the inversion of the pyramid. I think traditionally, if you look at the finance pyramid, bulk of our time is spent on transaction finance and reporting and control. But that pyramid A will need to shrink as we get leaner and fitter as a function. And secondly, the pyramid itself will need to invert, where bulk of the time and quality time is spent on guiding the business with strategy and insight, and very little time is spent on transaction finance. Transaction finance will need to get automated with the use of various technology, and bulk of the time will need to be spent on strategy and insight. The third, and I think you talked about Ritu, I think is the change in our workforce. Finance workforce will be a digital workforce of the future. COVID has already accentuated that change, and the future finance teams will be more data savvy. They'll be problem solvers, and I think they'll need to build the art of storytelling, which focuses on providing business insights and decision support, and not just transaction finance. So I think these are the three trends that I see play out. Real-time finance, inversion of the pyramid, and the digital and tech-savvy workforce.
Yeah. Excellent, Ashish. And, I really like that point you made about storytelling, because so much of it is the interpretation of data, and not just that persuasion, and constructively challenging sometimes in our roles at finance. And that storytelling becomes so important. Yeah. So thank you for bringing that and all the other points. So I'll turn over to K. Venkataraman for your thoughts. Is Mr.
Venkataraman, can you unmute?
Sorry, apologies.
Yeah.
So I would say that I agree with the views of my earlier panelists, and thanks, Ritu. So I would look at it like this. So business will continue to be, kind of the issues. What remains would always, change in some form or the other. You will have always disruptive, operating models coming into play. But look at the changes. I would see one. Firstly, you will find the finance to be more involved or more savvy on predictive modeling, because what we have gone through in the last couple of years on this COVID pandemic or the other risks in terms of, say, a recent one on Russia-Ukraine conflicts, which are imposing a lot of challenges for a business in terms of, for example, our business is more export centered. So we are facing issues around the container availability or logistics movement. Some of this predictive modeling, how do we look at the business on a real-time basis, sort of anticipate or what kind of risk this modeling is there, and how do we help the business sort of bring their attention to some of these risk areas and help them navigate. So that will become something very critical going forward. Secondly, you will have definitely the digital is one and physical is one. So you will have people sort of ability to bridge the physical digital kind of work. The sense, many of some, so one should be capable or savvy enough to work across both. In a sense, one has to work in business solutions which are focused on digital, as well as trying to marry the digital with the physical world. So you'll always have businesses which may be traditional, having their own factories, factory setups, or any of those kind of manufacturing areas. So you'll also have people working across both digital and physical. That becomes very the finance guys have to learn to work both across the digital and physical spaces. Thirdly, some of these, you'll have definitely going forward many more centers of excellence. Today we have, the traditional finances still remain business partnering or compliances or reporting, investor communications, all that will remain. But more and more of centers of excellence, because there are so many changes happening, including the tax world. There is more connectivity across. There will be global tax. If you're operating in a multi-jurisdictional environment, you're going to face all those kinds of OECD changes, challenges, and all the connectivity. So all those will become more and more centers of excellence, which will work where the CFO's office will have to kind of pilot it and work closely with the CEO and the business teams towards navigating these changes and also communicate the kind of solutions what can be there. This is what I had.
Excellent. Thank you. And that's the voice of experience, Vector. Very, very interesting, as you've come through, an entire experience in the last, 2-3 years. So Atul, where you sit and you see lots of clients, tell me the top 2 or 3 things that you're seeing in the next 3-4 years as you look towards global clients and Indian clients both.
So Ritu, first of all, good evening to all the fellow panelists and all the people coming in here. I think this is a good platform for all of us for knowledge sharing. And the best part of coming to the panel and speaking after 4 panelists is that you don't need to drill down. A lot of points are covered. And Devendra, I clearly mentioned, I agree with you saying the role of the CFO itself is changing, right? The role of the CFO has been a fiscal protector. Now that role has to now become champion of innovation, a champion of growth. And we talked about the blurring lines between the front office and the back office, right? The front line and the back line. The investments in terms of, say, a digital is not necessarily a digital finance investment, right? The investment is necessarily a business investment, which will then translate into transactions. And by the inherent nature of finance, right? Anything and everything which happens in business is money. The accounting for that, the financing for that, the reporting for that, and the activities like such have to be a part of that, right? So that's one. Second, and Ashish, I think, mentioned about it, is around the real-time closing on hourly basis, on-demand closing, etc. Right? So what it essentially means is the exponential growth in the demand for real-time analytics, right? It is not only the role, but the demand of the functions around us that will be from the finance of being able to provide real-time insights, right? It can be in the form of on-demand closing, real-time dashboards, operational metrics which are linked to the business metrics. And hence, it is not only about data and digital, It is about having a very, very integrated transformation approach, which is based on cloud platforms, because the lines between the online and offline are going to blur, right? Everybody is, it's omni-channel, right? Irrespective of whatever you are doing. And hence, the entire transformation approach has to be cloud-based, driven by data, and then all the outcomes which come in are the digital part of it. But the third piece, which I kind of wanted to emphasize upon, is the experience piece. And Ashish, you mentioned about the police, right? And traditionally, the finance team has been looked upon as police, right? A bottleneck. But the focus is changing now. The ecosystem around us will look for a maniacal focus on experience. It can be in terms of touchless processes. It can be in terms of self-service. People are experiencing chatbots, right? People are seeing in all the apps they're using. They will demand that internally from the finance organizations as well, be it your internal stakeholders, be it our vendors, be it our customers. So that pace of change has to happen really fast, right? And some of the leading technology will enable that. Some of this technology like process mining, machine learning, cognitive computing, IoT, blockchain, we are hearing about it. We are seeing some use cases, but honestly speaking, as of now, there is no ROI on that. But the pace of change with which these technologies will get deployed around us, and Ritu, you talked about the metaverse as well, right? Is it will force the finance departments to change really fast. And it doesn't matter whether it is a large organization or a small and medium organization, it is going to impact all of us. And we have seen this. We have seen this in the past, right? Government of India, when they came up with GST and said, we will do transaction level matching for the input rate, the entire industry, all the industry in India had to change their world, right? The way income tax filings are being done now, right? Pre-filling of the forms, it is done. RBI is going to issue a digital currency. So all the enterprises across have to really work around it, and ensure that they are ready for it proactively rather than waiting for the change to happen and they're getting swept away. So those are the three broad points which I thought from a future perspective, as a CFO, we should clearly look at.
Excellent. So, that's a perfect segue. So those were, dear audience, the opening comments on the future of the CFO office and the future of finance itself. And you heard, a whole range of views. And I think there is an overlap in terms of, and a synergy in terms of the way we are thinking about it. I do want to move to a related topic, which is of connectedness. And Swam, I want to invite you into the conversation and ask you this, that operating in India and a very rapidly digitizing economy, and we are very, very proud of the ecosystem that is developing around us and which is inclusive and which is, all encompassing to so many citizens. When you think about finance and you think about the kind of outcomes and the kind of value that finance can now drive in this connected economy, what are your thoughts? What are the value drivers that are available to finance, and how should we think about value from finance in this evolving ecosystem?
Very interesting question. Thank you. No, I mean, it has been very insightful so far. Some great insights. On this question specifically, if I look back last 10 years, I have seen two phases of sort of two different dimensions of finance transformation. When, it started, I think about 8, 10, 12 years back in global companies, it was more, finance on back foot. Finance where, the cost have to be optimized. We have to get, more accurate. We have to get faster. So the theme was around centralization, creating shared services, better ERP. Somebody talked about it. Optimized planning tools, touchless processing, essentially everything which was inward looking, right? It's inside finance. How do you get better? It's a cost function. How do you optimize? How do you become more accurate? While having still low burden on organization. I think that has been one phase. What I'm seeing now more and more, and I have seen plethora different type of organizations over last 5-7 years. Very traditional one, for example, like Hindustan Zinc, or a very modern organization like Ola. What I see more and more is finance is actually playing on front foot, and this is just getting faster. So there is this new finance where, if I can just sum it up, it's all really about aiding access to right information when you need it, both in shape and form. And I think, this sort of summary, one sentence is applicable to where finance is headed. And I very strongly believe that that change is coming, sooner than later. So if I, talk about what it means, so what finance is doing more and more, for example, is around performance management and benchmarking. Both internal and external. In fact, I'm one of those guys who's actually looking to hire a data scientist in my team. So essentially, one source of truth, right scenario planning, being more nimble, driving next level of analytics to really see, how are we doing versus peers. We have been traditionally, we are used to quarterly annual performances, right? And planning. How about weekly? Somebody talked about on-demand information. And all of that is becoming more and more relevant, especially after we have seen, what we had to go through during COVID time. And some of the companies have come out really smart. And I've seen some of those organizations, especially the CFOs there, really seeing finance as a function differently. One of the key changes which is happening now, and again, I thought this was talked about earlier, is really understanding your operating drivers and converting them, giving them a dollar value. A lot of us, are focused on not only, traditionally from a reporting and sort of, maintaining a traditional organization form, to really going down deeper and seeing, for example, a loom which produces a certain type of fabric. What is the cost of operating? And when you have right data flowing into you, you take smarter decisions like, do you repair versus buy? I mean, some of these, what is happening more and more is with right level of information available, right type of analytics getting more and more real, which was traditionally not in finance domain, helping organizations becoming nimble, smarter with their cash, smarter with their decision making. What I also see, towards this performance management is also benchmarking. So, traditional finance function, finance transformation was inward focus. There is a lot of today is, for example, we all are suffering from commodity prices going up. Am I buying right? And, if you go to any procurement function, you realize that there is still a very traditional way of looking at, did you buy better? Or, did you buy better versus your last purchase? Today, I think we are asking more and more that, am I aligned to where the global prices are? Are there smarter ways to sort of check the effectiveness of what we are doing? The other part of new finance is around decision making. And I have seen this again and again. There has been a sea shift on the role finance and CFO office and the finance organization has started to play around decisions, whether learning from past, using data, leveraging data around CapEx decision. We already have situations where similar type of CapEx is getting repeated. And the analytics which is available to the organization help us see. I mean, I'm sure this is true for a lot of companies. Are you actually able to, did your past decisions went as planned? And it's just right data available to you before you take your next decision. Or a predictive analytics, which helps you decide, should you repair, should you buy? Then, decisions around variability of cost. So it's all about, fixed cost reduction has been a traditional theme. Can you operate at a level which allows you to scale down faster? This can only happen when you understand your data right. Then there are other areas like vendor performance evaluation, procurement effectiveness. But what is also happening more and more is there is far more connected ecosystem now, towards your supplier, towards your customers, bankers. We are implementing, for example, a new upgraded version of CRMs, demand planning, which is linked with our supplier systems. An LC, which traditionally used to take 2 days to execute, now gets executed online. A lot of that is towards that connected ecosystem. I think some of these big changes are going to define next phase of finance. And as I said, finance traditionally has been a function which would essentially report to a function which would actually decide what are the right KPIs, right metrics to track, and sort of show mirror to the entire organization on how the performance has been and what is the right direction to take when it comes to, let's say, manage a future risk for the organization.
Excellent, excellent, Swam. And I really, enjoyed the examples that you took to bring business partnering to life. And I think a lot of us could relate to some of the examples around, that you gave around the CapEx and the cash flow and the working capital and so on. So thank you very much for that insightful comments. I'll turn to Shankar Narayan. Do you think the shifts that Swayam just talked about, is it happening fast enough? Do you see this actually happening?
Actually, there are three important factors which matter. One is the industry which you work in. If you come from an industry like telecom, where I spent a lot of while, digital was the basis of whatever you did. Everything was connected. Everything happened on the go. You were 24/7. Anything you did reflected on what the enterprise was doing. A price increase or an error in the system would cost you crores. I think what is important in this whole process, as was pointed out, is that unless you go digital, you cannot grow. And unless you are connected, growth and assurance is not going to be there. The most important aspect for me as a CFO is I'm the enterprise salesman here. I sell the company to all my partners or all the stakeholders, be it the investor, be it the banker, be it the GST teams, be it the compliance teams, be it the income tax department. And all of that, if you really have to enforce and make them believe that you have an organization which has been doing things correctly at a correct time and has been enabling a lot of factors for growth, for future, for prediction, for whatever may be the purpose that you're working on. Digital, unless you are completely connected to every aspect of business, you are not going to get the results. So one of the key things that we are now doing is moving to mobiles for decision making. I think that is the next world. Your tabs, your professional tabs, your mobiles, large mobiles are going to be critical for you to start taking quicker decisions. And for this, you need to be completely connected to every ecosystem that exists, be it the commodity market, be it the pricing mechanism, be it the customer system. We dump a lot of data into the customer system on a daily basis. Every invoice of ours gets dumped onto the customer system. And for all of that to happen, you need to be having a robust digital system, and that alone will ensure you get maximum value. Secondly, as a salesman of the organization, if I have to assure them various things about the organization, be it a return, be it a growth, be it the kind of predictability of the industry that we work in, and the transparency that is required. All of these ecosystems have to be connected together and has to be centrally wrapped around the enterprise resource planning package which exists, be it a CRM, be it any one of them, and they deliver only when they are seamlessly connected to every aspect of business. And that's something we know is driven by various people in different organizations. In our organization, it started with the customer and the fact that they required us to be in multiple locations. In many other places, it could be different factors, but unless these factors exist, survival in today's environment is close to zero. You have to be nimble, you have to be online, you have to be connected, LCs have to happen in 2 hours, bill discounting has to happen in 2 hours, money has to be available 24/7. I think that's when customer has to know you don't sleep and you're always available to him. And that's the key to this whole process of digitization in today's world.
Well said, Shankar Narayan, very well said. And I do want to come to Praveen, who is from technology. And you're hearing the CFOs speak, you're hearing the voices, you're hearing about digital. How does somebody in technology make this real? And what kind of challenges do you see as finance is transforming? What kind of technology can help finance transform faster?
Thank you, Ritu, and First of all, quite a bit of interesting insights from both Swayam as well as Shankar. Very, very insightful. And I've heard these things quite a bit interacting with my stakeholders from the finance domain. Now, coming to your point, how do we make this happen? Now, there's no one answer to it, as you might agree on that. There are various things, and it all depends where the organization is. Many times we want to do a lot of things, but then when we do a reality check, we feel that some organization is at certain maturity level, some organization at some other maturity level. So different levels of maturity, because that is where the journey starts actually. And then once you figure out where you want to be from where you are, then there are plethora of technologies that are available. But the technology will work as good as what you have in the process. So that's where we normally say that, look at your business process management. Now, this is where the big focus is as of now. Get your processes aligned, defined end to end at organization level. And in some cases, probably beyond the organization level. So you're connecting not only within the organization, but you're also connecting with your suppliers, customer systems, so on and so forth. So that's where the starting point would typically come in. So you start with the process, and then once you are aligned and figuring out what you really want, then you come up with the best digital solution that is available in the market. Now, again, depending on what you want to do, there are many players in the market. And this is where the focus would turn back, saying that what are your success criteria? What exactly you want to achieve? Is this something to do with the customer? Is it something to do with improving the turnaround times, go-to-market times, so on and so forth? Sometimes it would be top 3 priorities would be very, very clear, and there will be many other which will be a byproduct of these things. So that's how you figure out how do you go about it, which are the top ones that we have to achieve, and the other ones which are going to be byproducts could be tackled later on. But some of the very important aspects that are also coming up recently is, for example, compliance. So far, earlier, compliance was always post facto. We normally check end of the month, end of the quarter, end of the year, things so on and so forth. Now with BPM coming into play and digital initiatives coming into play, so some of the key things which we are embedding or which we look forward to embedding in the digital solution is compliance by default. So you don't really have to do certain things and then figure out how do you fix it, so on and so forth. Many years back, I heard this great example. If you look at our railway stations, the standard railway stations, they're not so clean, they're not so good. We don't really feel like going there. But it's the same set of people when they come to a metro, the behavior changes completely. So this person said, the same person who would not mind spitting in the normal railway station will hold it back if it is in a metro. So this is what digital does. So once you put those controls in place, there's absolutely no scope of doing something wrong. So that is what we typically call it as digital logs. So all these things put together can improve the overall organization's operations significantly. Whatever it is about reporting, analytics, and as Fam correctly said, there is nowadays data is the gold. So you have predictive analysis, and very soon predictive analysis is going to drive many things, and it's going to be the backbone. And a lot of organizations will be left with no choice but to embark on. So they will be left behind if you don't do it. So that's what is going to happen. And it is very important that if you really want to leverage the predictive analytics, you have your data quality right. And that's another big challenge that we normally face. Our data is scattered. We are not really focused on that. So it all starts with process, data, ensuring that the compliance is taken care of, and then defining what exactly our target goals are, and accordingly start working towards it. Because you cannot change everything at the same time. You need to take steps in a particular direction and then start working on the other levers.
Excellent. Thank you, Praveen. And the way you laid it out is a consultant's dream, the way you linearly laid out, the transformation journey. I had a couple of next questions, which are interrelated. So I'm going to really combine it in the interest of time. I had a question around the challenges, of this journey and the barriers and enablers of this journey. And I also wanted to ask you that your investment in digital transformation, has it lived up to its promise and potential? So really, I'm going to combine the two and invite Ashish, you first, to tell us what have been the biggest enablers and the biggest barriers? And do you think you've gotten your ROI from the kind of digital investments that you've made in the enterprise?
So thanks, Ritu. I think most often we make the mistake of thinking, that tools and technology is actually the biggest enabler of digital transformation in an organization. But to my mind, I think the biggest enabler is a culture of innovation, and I think the tone from the top. Because if you do not have sponsorship from the top management, how much of you can get the best of the tools, you can spend as much capex, but if there is no adoption in the organization and there is no cultural shift in the organization to adopt to that digitization or tools or technology, the entire effort of the program may fall falter. So I think it's the starting point is to align the top and the culture in the organization. To my mind, the second biggest enabler is to have a formal strategy and execution plan. While they all say that you don't have to choose digital because it's already been chosen for you. Therefore, there's no running away from digital. But it cannot be just by the way. It cannot be a Friday evening project that you do as an afterthought. It has to be at the center of your strategy, and there has to be investments made if you have to really go to the digital transformation. And I think third and important is, and we've all talked about connectedness. The program and the digitization program itself has to be looked at not only from the perspective of internal stakeholders, but also to see how do we sort of seamlessly, connect to the external ecosystem, which is also evolving at a very fast pace. And if I may add, a fourth dimension is also getting the right talent, because the existing talent sometimes in the organization may not be attuned to the kind of outcomes that you may want to achieve as part of your digital program. So how do you sort of do the skill gap assessment and bridge it through a structured intervention?
Excellent, Ashish. That's very, very well spoken. So, K. Venkataraman, would you agree with Ashish? Would you have any other perspective to add as we think about the promise and the potential of digital?
Well, I broadly agree with Ashish. So what I think is, one is a couple of things, what our own experience in what we have been going through. See, one is, of course, kind of you have to sort of identify what you want to do, like what you want to achieve, where is the destination, what landing point you want. Secondly, some of these the business issues, how do we really use technology or digital? For example, the enablers must be there. For us, for example, just to take an example, in our manufacturing instant coffee, etc., we use a lot of water. So one of the challenges, since we are a company which is also focused quite a bit on ESG metrics, and our customers look for sustainability as a platform. So we have been trying to look at how do we reduce the water footprint. So that is one challenge which we have. Second challenge possibly is to look at some of the fuel and energy like thing. For example, look at put IoTs or sensors in the factories and look at how do we track some of these areas of water or energy fuel being consumed. So some of these are, one is of course we have these kind of business issues which will probably help us in in trying to give our customers better value, or the kind of communicating the sustainability metrics in a better way, which will help us our business. Second is the availability of technology is also one. For example, if I want to say reduce water, I may have a desire of reducing the water footprint by 50%, but technology has to be available. Finally, we have to we are producing coffee which is to be drunk, and that the kind of the blends or recipes they use has to produce that kind of coffee which can be exported or consumed. So one is availability of the problem is the technology availability is one which has to be looked at. And thirdly, you look at the barriers per se. One is I'm saying the availability of right technology at the price. One can't also there is a capital allocation which resource allocation which is there. One has to manage the P&L, which is all, as a CFO of the business, one has to also work closely to look at what kind of ROAs are there, and ROAs also what kind of the time frame within which over which you will get. So these are a couple of things what we have gone through. Finally, you see some of these places. What I am saying, for example, look at plantations where we produce coffee. So one of the things which we have implemented, which we through the digital kind of enablers, is we look at profitability for each block, because that's what we have large hectares of land. We produce so much, there's a yield, and we need to also manage the cost, because that's where when you have a commodity volatility cycles, you have to manage the cost in an efficient manner, in a smart manner. So obviously we are looking at, trying to drill down profitability. How do you, bring it to the lowest level of lowest level of unit. For us, maybe it will be a block, as a block or a field level. And then working with the business team. See, there's a lot of orientation required because some of the business teams have to be sort of understanding these costs and profitability angles when you look at all these technology and then implement it. So these are some of my thoughts in this area.
Thank you, Venkatraman. Again, very, very connected to the business and the business model that you have, and thank you for taking those examples. So, you've got your hands raised. Would you like to respond or react to any of the points that were made?
Yes, Ritu. I mean, Ashish and Venkatraman made very valid point. Just want to share one from my experience, since we're talking of ROI. Many a times these digital automation initiatives do not get accepted to the lowest level of organization because the solution designer tend to get obsessed with the solution and do not really see what is needed down the ground. And I think I keep telling my team here that whatever you make, are you solving something for the guy who's going to use it? If you can do that, I think there'll be far more acceptability, and you'll be able to sustain whatever is getting deployed or solved. I have personally felt this has always helped whenever you're able to create a value for them. So that's something I wanted to add.
So I'll take that phrase away of solution obsession. I think it's an interesting one to think about. So very interesting. So Devendra, any reactions to what you just heard, and what is your very quickly, what is your perspective on this topic of getting the maximum from digital and really getting ROI from there?
So in the initial years when this digital transformation was happening, it was more the problems were more coming from the people side. People were fear of losing their jobs because of the ERP coming in place, etc., which created a lot of roadblocks in the initial era. But I think in today's time, everybody has become more aware, more educated. The challenge in today's world is the selection of the right type of solution for digital transformation, and then retaining the right talent. Once you become trained on a particular platform, it becomes very difficult to retain the talent within the organization. So while you are taking initiatives to automate your systems, process, etc., you also need to have a strategy in place. How do you ensure that system continues uninterrupted in future? I think that's a key learning which I have in my organization, wherein a lot of people who got trained in SAP in the initial years, they became asset for other companies. So at times, I think this is one of the key learning or key point which I want to put before the forum.
That's challenge. No, I think it's a very real challenge, that you've highlighted. I do want to keep moving and go to one topic that I've been wanting to come to, and Shankar Narayan, that question is to you. It is the age of prioritization, and we can do so many things. There's so many things to be done, as we look forward to this entire future of finance and the CFO agenda. But if you could help us prioritize what should be fundamental, which every CFO must look at, before you look at anything else, what would that be? What would be your top two in digital transformation?
The first one is a connected organization. When we mean a connected organization, we mean that every touch point of be it the customer, be it the supplier, be it the vendor, be it the employee, be it everybody, needs to have an access to the digital medium. If you take us as an organization, our compulsion to digitize started with the fact that we had to do just-in-time service. We had to be, for which we had to be multi-location. And you had only so much finite resources to deploy and to be connected and to control operations and deliveries. And when we mean deliveries, that a delay in delivery would cost you a month's profit on penalties. So when you work with that kind of compulsions, you need to put in your core in place. And we did way back in '99 with SAP, one of the earliest SAP implementations. Now, what did we do after that? You had to bring in every function. And the problem is, like has been mentioned here, starting with the finance people who take their fiduciary responsibilities so seriously that we refuse to give up controls. Because we believe when we go digital, controls are lost. I don't know how can there be more control by signing a check than approving a transaction digitally. Actually, that's far better if you really look at it from a control aspect. Second is, as I said, multi-locational, which meant that your enterprise planning had to be up and running. That is, you had to plan your purchases, you had to plan your stocks, your raw material stocks. All of that can happen only if you have a core system in place and you are operating it. So the drive, so we had this initial period when a lot of the enterprise planning happened on Excel. Thanks to Microsoft, people loved it because it then stayed with a set of people. It didn't move out. But then when the generation changed on the top, it has moved back completely into SAP. Third is the factor that you have to continuously keep upgrading and innovating. If you don't do that, you're not going to catch up with UPI. And if you don't catch up with UPI in your thinking, whether you do the UPI or not, you're missing opportunities of making sure you digitize the whole ecosystem that you work in. This, as you know, can enable 1,000 actions for us. So we operate out of 14, currently we operate 17 plants in 5 locations. But I have not in the last 6 months traveled to any of them. But I'm sure I'm closely associated with all of them because of this connectivity that you are sitting on. You have to go digital. You have to go down to the lowest medium of digital, which is the mobile. So this is either you have the management on the top, which pushes for it, or you have the customer who pushes for it, or you have the ecosystem which insists. And finally, when you put this together, put your core, which is strong, and then continuously keep evolving it by putting small amounts of money to keep it top notch with the latest. If you have SAP, better go to SAP HANA next, because that gives you a lot of gateways and that gives you a lot of freedom to operate. And any fear putting in that money and trying to count what money goes into that capex is going to be the most harmful fact that you face, because many of them don't have direct relationship to your return in a real sense. But we operate 17 plants only because we are connected through the central core and continuously evolve the central core in a manner that every function comes onto it and the complete paperless organization is possible to evolve. And
Excellent.
this we have done seamlessly. We do the cloud, we do the DMS, we do every aspect of it now.
Excellent. Thank you, Shankar. And I think that is a whole story of a journey there, right, as to how it got prioritized at various points of time in the company. And I think it's extremely fascinating the way you contextualize that journey. So look, I'm conscious of the time, and I'm going to ask each of the panelists here to do a quick 1 minute on your closing thoughts. And the one thing that I would ask you to do is, you're all at a role that is very aspirational to people. We have this wonderful platform that FICCI has put together in partnership with us. And this will be on YouTube, and many audience, today and later, will listen to this. So I'm going to ask, starting with Praveen, with you, saying what would be your advice to the young finance professionals out there today as they think about building their careers in finance? So Praveen, we'll start with you. We'll go to Venkataraman and then Ashish and so on. Go ahead, please.
So I think for the generation that is starting or still in the nascent stages, I would say some of the things are by default happening, and this is the concept that is driving. And we say digital by default. So our thought process has to be tuned to that, because there's no more paper, there's no more about doing something in a hard copy manner and then digitizing it. It starts with digital. So that thought process is very, very important, and it is not easy to get there. So that would be one of the biggest things for the individuals to change their thought process, their mindset, and start applying it. And second is, if you're not digital, very soon you're not there. So that is something which we need to really accept. And if you look at it, these days, especially the folks, the younger generation, they expect certain level of digitization. And if it is not there, and even if you talk to some of the primary school kids or higher school kids, they expect certain things to be there. And if your organization and whatever you're doing is not meeting those basic criterias, you're lost. You're losing a fantastic opportunity. So those are something that are coming in. And then third and most important is, if you look at India specifically, India is going to be one of the most digitized countries probably in the coming few years. With whatever is happening, we have everything getting digital. You have land records to health records getting digitized, so on and so forth. And when we start thinking everything from a digital space, it's just not for internal focus, it is external, it is everything. So if you're not digitally compliant, if you're not thinking through digitally right from the beginning, you will not be, it might become difficult to survive itself. So it is going to become quite challenging if you don't start doing these things right from the beginning. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. K. Venkataraman.
Yeah. So
three things that you would like to give to the young professionals who are listening to you.
So I will say two things. One, as Praveen also said, being digitally savvy. And secondly, being open to technology. How do you put technology to better use in the company? What are the solutions which you can using digital? What can you bring? So long as the young finance professional is sort of being open to that, and ability to argue the case out of the business case, or how technology can help the business, that would be the big thing. Thanks.
Excellent. Thank you. Ashish? Your thoughts?
Yeah. Sorry, I just unmuted myself. Sorry. I think a lot has been said already. What I would say is that I think a couple of things. One, I think whether digital or not, I think one of the most important aspect for a finance leader to build is business intimacy, because that itself allows you to then solve the real problems. Because it's very easy to get lost in this avalanche of data and digital tools. But then going down to the basics and asking the real question, I think is very important. And second, I think is risk aversion, because finance professionals tend to be fearful of what may or may not happen, and therefore I think fear is the enemy of change. So I would say, do not fear the fear, and plunge and do the right things for the company.
Well said. I wish I had heard this many, many years ago, Ashish, as I embarked on my finance journey, but really well said. Shankar Narayan?
I think it's time the finance professionals start being ready for being crypto ready. I think it's an unavoidable. Blockchain is unavoidable. They are here. In what form and what manner digital currency is going to be working, I think the young professionals that are there are tech savvy already. I think some of the push, even in the institute and the organizations they come out, are very tech enabled. I think the next step on the tech enabled journey is to go down the crypto route and the blockchain route. And that, I think, is inevitable and has to be part of any of the processes of a young finance professional. Everybody knows you partner with business, but when you partner with business, this is key to that whole process going forward. Seamless transactions, as they would call it.
Excellent. That's a prediction of the ecosystem as much as it is of the skill set. Thank you for that. Swayam?
Yeah, I'm going to keep it very simple because 5, 10 years, 15 years from now, no matter which state we are in, there's still going to be a revenue and a cost and a margin out of it. So understand business. You really have to get that right before any optimization can be done. Second, stay nimble, because technology is changing fast. We have already seen what last 5 years did. I can't even imagine what next 5 years will be. So stay nimble, stay flexible, and always get priorities right. And it's a skill I took some time to learn. But yeah, these three will keep you safe.
Wonderful. And Devendra, I think you have the last word today. So go ahead, please, your thoughts.
Guess I am the lucky person who opened the question answer and also maybe closing this one. So thank you for that. My advice to all young professionals is to maintain a balance in their decision-making process when it comes to driving the digital transformation in the organization, both in terms of the investment, risk, and taking the team along. You may be driving this process in a new age organization where a lot of people are of young age and they come along with you. But sometimes the organization is an old organization where a lot of people are coming from a different background. So drive the initiative in a way, both the new age guys and the old age guys, the old system and the new system go hand in hand. That reduces the risk. That increases the investment ROI. It makes implementation much more easier if you take these precautions beforehand. Thank you.
Well, thank you. I think that brings us to the end of our panel discussion. I think we're about 5 minutes over time from where we budgeted, but I think given the esteemed panel, I think 5 minutes should be okay for us to overshoot. So back to you, Alas. If you have questions, I'm happy to take that on. I can't view it right now, but happy to take that on.
Yeah, it's one of the finest finance session I've attended in the recent past. Thank you, Ritu. Right from the 9 slides and the opening remarks is amazing. And the professionals who are there on this panel made such complicated subject make us to feel it's really simple. We can always work around. And it comes with a lot of wisdom, their experience, either IT or non-IT or finance and supply chain. For me, it was like getting into a class, and every word what they have told is worth tons of experience. And my request next would be for PWC for putting such a big show and very, very rich show with such kind of an insight. You should go to the next level of finance professionals who are young and you are getting into the profession. Probably you may have to conduct a workshop for them because it's not easy for them to understand the speed in which we put it together. And 75 minutes of our time, I mean, it's worth tons for our younger generation. Probably Shaju can work on a workshop for a city-wise for young professionals, so that when they go back to their offices, they know that what it means digitization in finance function, and we will work that. But personally, for me, it was an absolutely great experience, and thank you for that, Ritu. And you are a fantastic moderator. I can see the moderation when you are doing the kind of depth of knowledge what you have through your consulting practice, and hats off to you. You have done a fantastic job, and last 75 minutes has been best time for me in the recent past. Thank you for that.
Thank you, Lars, for your kind words. I do want to thank the panelists, and I can assure you that I and my team will be seeing this YouTube very, very closely, because I think some of the stories from the ground and some of the contextualization that each of our panelists have done is absolutely invaluable to us as well. So I do want to thank all the CFOs and the panelists who came today. And Ulas, thank you for putting together an amazing panel.
Ritu, we have a few, firms which are there. I would like to open this for, the questions from the audience. So
sure.
Can we do that? Arya, can you open that and call up if somebody wants to raise any questions or any clarification they wanted?
Yeah, sure. So we actually have a few senior leaders from the industry here as participants who have opened up the speaking link for everyone. So we would love to hear their experiences and expertise or questions, if they have any. So over to you, people. Mr. Sandeep Chopra, Ms. Champaka from Boruka Park, she's a CFO. Any questions, ma'am? Or anything to share, ma'am?
Hello. Yeah, I participated in a session like this after a long time, and it was quite nice to be a part of it. No, I think that's the only way out. Digitalize or perish. And then I heard somewhere that, the front end operations are so fast. It's, the back end or the accounting or the finance is not yet caught up with in many of the industries. So I think it's high time that has to be done. Otherwise, without digitalization, we perish. I mean, we won't be able to add value and will be considered just to be, an accounting function and no longer a value add. I've come from the Nestle world where a CFO is a co-pilot. There's no distinction. A person who sets into the role of a CEO in case there's an absence. So that being in mind, you won't be able to drive operations if you're just in that old mindset. That's my view.
Excellent.
Anybody else? Idea?
Yeah, if anyone else wants to share anything, please go ahead.
I think there is not much questions from, so it was quite comprehensive and informative. I think that is why there is not much of questions from the audience. So it is good that on behalf of FICCI, I would like to extend my sincere thanks to all the panelists who have taken time and joined for this extensive discussions, which has helped us to move forward, as Mr. Ulas Kamath has suggested, to take this forward with kind of interaction with the young CFOs for next level of interactions. So we will be doing that with PWC. So thank you for everybody for joining us today. Especially, I would like to also to thank PWC, Ritu, Chetan, and Avantika, and all the team from PWC for taking time and interacting with it. It took almost 3 weeks for us to curate this program, and their cooperation, their guidance was very much valuable, and we value that quite a lot. So I hope such interactions in future also will be helpful to iron out any kind of issues related to the finance, and also we will look forward to. So thank you very much, all the panelists, everybody, and also all the audience. Thank you from FICCI. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye, everyone. Thank you.